Hi, everyone, and welcome to our last episode of the Sea Turtle Science series. I am Dr. Vanessa Bezy, and today we're going to be talking about the threats to sea turtles. Before we get started, I wanted to reach out and take a couple of polls to find out how many of you have been getting access to the story maps, and also to find out whether you've been doing any research of your own. So first I'm going to publish a poll asking how many Sea Turtle Science Series story maps have you read? The story maps are essentially online websites that you can scroll through. These are meant to accompany everything that I share on these live videos. So I'd love to hear if you've had a chance to see those. We're going to be sharing a link with all of the videos that we've recorded embedded and hopefully making a Spanish version soon. So I hope that you guys take advantage of that opportunity to learn a little bit more and see some extra footage. I'm going to leave that poll up for a little bit and watch as people start joining us. And the next poll, the other question that I wanted to ask is whether you have done any of your own research on sea turtle science since following the Sea Turtle Science series. Whether this just means that you Googled a picture of a sea turtle, maybe you read an article, or you saw something in the news about sea turtles that you maybe wouldn't have normally read, anything like that. I would love to hear whether you have gotten more engaged as a result of this as well. So I'm going to create that poll as well, and hopefully you can continue answering this poll. So we'll leave those open, and we'll have a look at the results later. Before we get started, I wanted to give a little bit of background. Sea turtles have a lot of threats, and living in the ocean, they interact with, and also on land, they have a very complex way of, it's very difficult for us to manage them and to protect them. And so today I'm going to focus on some of the main threats to sea turtles, and talk about, sorry, I think there's a question, let me double check. We saw a video of how sea turtles mate. Ooh, I like that. Very great. I'm happy to see that you got to see that video. So going back to the threats, we have a lot of different threats to sea turtles. Today we're going to focus on the major ones. These are some of the biggest ones, and we're going to focus on just 4 of these. But I did want to mention that obviously if you remember correctly, there are several species. There are 7 species of sea turtles in the world, and they all behave differently. They eat different things, and they're in different areas of the ocean even. So depending on where sea turtles are, that can really determine the kinds of threats they see. Specifically, the hawksbill turtle is a really beautiful turtle. It has an incredible shell, and this turtle, for example, is mostly hunted for its shell that gets made into jewelry. You've probably noticed a lot of fake versions of this that they call tortoise shell that is kind of a brown speckly pattern. So that's one example of a sea turtle that's pretty much its biggest threat, but some turtles have other threats as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about all of that today. The first biggest threat that I want to share with you about sea turtles is that, again, because they're in the ocean and they spend most of their life in the ocean, I really consider the biggest threat and the most important one to sea turtles to be fishing, especially really large-scale commercial fisheries. And when we talk about fishing, what's a really big, important term for us to learn is called bycatch. Bycatch is when a fisherman is, for example, trying to fish only tuna, but when he goes to fish tuna, he ends up getting 70% of his catch, so more than half of it is a bunch of other fish that he's not interested in, and those fish might get thrown back overboard, and many of them are already dead. That is what we call bycatch. It's very, very wasteful, as you can imagine, and it turns out that sea turtles, sharks, and even small dolphins and whales are getting caught in a lot of these nets, and this is a huge, huge threat for all marine life, especially turtles. So to talk a little bit more about fishing, because not everyone knows what this looks like, the gear is very important. Some gear, they're not all the same, and some are particularly bad, and these are some of the worst ones. Gill nets especially I love that they have the terms here. They call them the walls of death. And the long lines also. They're these very long lines that get left out with hooks. And many times there's lots of different animals that are caught in these. And another really destructive one, and I think is a really well described one, the bulldozing of the oceans, are the trawlers. And these are basically like giant rakes that go through the ocean and completely destroy the seafloor. So it's really sad to think about this, but it's important because we might eat fish every day. Actually, most of the earth, 70% of people on earth rely on the ocean to eat. And it's a very important source of food, but we don't realize how our fish is getting caught because it's all underwater and we can't see it. So these images hopefully help you understand a little bit just how bad that can be. The good thing is that we're going to stay positive and think always about what we can do about these threats. And you can do a lot on this threat. In most countries and a lot of areas now, they have a list of sustainable seafood. So fish that you can eat and know this fish is caught sustainably. Or maybe different fishermen. You can also just focus on buying local and make sure you're buying from small scale fisheries. And especially bigger fish like tuna and shrimp is also very hard to find really sustainably caught. But get informed and find out. In my case, I actually just decided not to eat seafood at all. So if that's something that you're willing to do or maybe just cut back on, you have to remember that every time that you're eating seafood, you're probably eating a side of some other marine animal you didn't want to kill in the process. So next up, I wanted to share another positive example of solutions for this problem, and it's a very important one. It's called the Turtle Excluder Device, or TED, and this is a system they invented that is inside of a net and allows sea turtles and larger animals that weren't meant to be caught to escape. Basically, it works like, you can imagine it's kind of like the grill on your outdoor barbecue or grill, and it's in the middle of the net, and so as all of the fish get caught through, the small fish go through that grid, and the big turtles might hit the grid, and then there's a little escape patch that they can come out through. And so this is a really cool invention that took a lot of work between scientists and fishermen and even getting it into law, but it's saving many, many turtles now and every day. So it's important always to be creative and come up with solutions. And this in the end is also good for the fishermen's nets because you can imagine it's not easy to get a turtle untangled from a net, and it usually damages the net. Now, the next one that I want to talk about is super important. And as we go through these threats, I want you to remember everything we learned about turtles, and it's all important, right? So we know they spend most of their time in the ocean, and that's why the nets and the fishing are really important threats. And the next thing is, we know sea turtles like to nest in the dark on the beach, and they rely on the shade of the trees to protect their nests, and they need a smooth, flat beach. If there's trash or logs or beach chairs all over the beach, that might be really difficult. So every time that we go to the beach, or if you live at the beach, it's really important to respect that that's the sea turtle's habitat. One of the biggest threats to sea turtles because of this is coastal development. And this means just any type of building along a coastline, especially if it means there's no tree line to protect from all of this light pollution. What's light pollution? Light pollution is any unnatural light, and it can affect even us as humans. You've probably had your parents say or someone say, you shouldn't stare at that screen so long, it's not good for you, or you'll have trouble sleeping. Seeing a source of light that's not natural makes our bodies think it's daytime. And the same thing happens with a lot of other animals. They get disturbed by this, and sea turtles especially are looking for a dark place to nest. So lights on the beach will scare turtles away, or it might confuse them. Hatchlings might go towards the lights at a hotel instead of going towards that moonlight that's shining off of the ocean. So these pictures here are examples of a program by the Sea Turtle Conservancy in Florida to decrease light pollution. And this is a great solution. This is something that you can do to help. Basically, there are 3 things that you need to know to have turtle-friendly lighting. Turtle-friendly lighting is shielded, it's low, and it's long. So keep it shielded, low, and long, and I'll explain all of these. So shielded is what you see here at the top. Shielded means there's a top to the light, and it's going downwards because of that. So we always want to make sure the light doesn't go into the sky, because a sea turtle won't just get confused by the actual light bulb, but that reflection that we call sky glow is also really important. The good thing is this is also good for us if you like to watch stars like me. This will also keep the starry night sky more visible. The next thing is to keep it low. So if you need lighting on a walkway, for example, keep your lights low to where they should be instead of all the way up high so that they light everything. So always keeping it low to the ground means there's more things that might cover it up on top, like trees or plants. And the last one is keep it long, and that means long wavelengths. You might know a little bit about the rainbow and colors and how they're in different wavelengths. Well, red is a long wavelength, and sea turtles are less sensitive to red light. So switching out light bulbs from a white light bulb to a red light bulb is another great solution to this problem. So you can see it takes a little bit of knowledge and scientists working together with people to come up with these solutions, but there's plenty of ways that we can avoid the impact that we have when we go on the beach. Keep the lights off on the beach at night, use red light, and make sure that you're not stepping on the dunes or killing any plants, and you can contribute a lot to sea turtle conservation. Next up, we have a very important threat, and this has gotten a lot of attention recently. You might have seen a really important viral video of a sea turtle that had a plastic straw up its nose. And that was actually filmed right near here in Costa Rica by a colleague of mine named Dr. Christine Finnegar. And what's really important to understand about plastic waste is that there are only 6 degrees of separation between you putting your trash into the trash can and that trash ending up in the ocean. So how does all that trash end up in the ocean? Well, you might put your trash into a trash bag, but the wind comes and blows it away. Or there's food in there and an animal goes in and it gets taken out of the trash by the animal. Next, what happens when it rains? My favorite part of Finding Nemo is a very important saying, is that all drains lead to the ocean. So when it rains, all of that trash ends up in drains, in pipes, into rivers, and eventually ends up in the ocean. And this is where it can endanger all kinds of marine life that mistake it for food. The next thing that I wanted to mention about trash that's really important to think about is what kind of trash are we finding? These are the top 10 trash items that were found in our oceans, and this was the result of a big international coastal cleanup. And you can see by far cigarettes are the number 1 item. Most people don't realize that cigarette butts are trash, but they actually have plastic in there, and they have a lot of nasty chemicals that are bad for the water. The next big item are plastic beverage bottles. So when we go through this list and start looking at it, you'll see that the kind of trash is important. If we look at this information, maybe we can learn something about what we can do to help. So in this case, maybe you can avoid using these types of items or make sure you dispose of them differently. But the best case scenario all around is to completely avoid anything that is single use. Anything that you would only use one time, you should try to find a replacement for it. Another super important threat to sea turtles is climate change. Now, it's a little difficult to think about climate change, but basically the point is our planet is getting hotter than ever before, and a lot of animals aren't able to adapt to that change in time, and so it's affecting a lot of species. For sea turtles, their eggs, the sex of the egg is determined, the embryo, sorry, the baby turtle's gender is determined by the place it is in the nest, so and the temperature of the nest. Males are coming from temperatures that are lower, females are coming from higher temperatures, and very high temperatures in a sea turtle nest can completely kill all of the baby turtles. So what this means is that as the planet's getting hotter, we're getting more and more females, which is already a little difficult to survive. And the next is that as it gets even hotter, some of these eggs aren't even hatching. So this is a really, really big concern. Now, climate change is the hardest threat for us to think about what we can do. It means basically changing our lifestyle, trying to use less energy, use less water, create less waste. There's so many issues that are tied to climate change. For me personally, I've decided to be a vegetarian. Other people can decide to walk to work or bike to work instead of driving. Everyone can do something small to help with climate change. Oops. So I'm going to check back in to see who we have on board here, and I wanted to kind of review the threats with you. I want to see what you think, which threat speaks most to you. Is there one that particularly when you hear it, maybe when you hear about seafood, it really upsets you? I want to find out which ones do you think are the ones that create more emotion when you're thinking about it. And then I also want to find out what's the one thing that you think you can do to help sea turtles. Like I said, there's a lot of different things and small things and big things that you can do. So I'd love to hear what you think about that as well. Sorry, I'm having trouble leaving the cards open. Let's try this. So what threats to sea turtles speaks the most to you? Which one impacts you the most or makes you think the most about our harm to sea turtles? I think we might have a small connection issue. So I'll give that a second. There. Fishing, yes, I agree. Coastal development as well. Here in Costa Rica, we're very lucky that we have a protected area on the beach. So that means that we have all kinds of trees and bushes, and there are no buildings beachfront. So the turtles have a very nice and dark beach, but there's a lot of beaches where there's a lot of lighting, where sea turtles used to nest and they're not nesting anymore. So that's an impact that you can definitely see next time you go to the beach. Think about that a little bit, but I'm sure that the beach you go to might be a little different than the beaches here in Costa Rica. I also see plastic bags and trash. I totally agree. I think it is so hard to see all of that trash end up there, and there's definitely a lot for us to improve on with waste management. And I think the first step, and something that we can really easily all do, is think about the kind of waste that you create. Here, for example, one of my favorite activities that I did that has really changed the way that I do groceries. One time I went to the grocery store and I looked at my cart and saw all of the plastic in it. And the next time I went shopping, I looked for other items that didn't have plastic. And I was actually able to find some really great local products. So I'm also supporting local businesses, the community, and it has a smaller carbon footprint. So it also decreases your contribution to climate change. If anyone has any other comments, please post them. I also wanted to ask what you can do to help. I don't know if I can see it. There it is. So what is the one thing that you think you can do to help turtles? I think that it's really important to think about just one thing and start there. There's a lot of different ways that you can just change your day-to-day life and make a really big difference. The other thing I'm going to start sharing with you now is that although this is our last lesson, I wanted to invite everyone to meet virtually on Google Meets for a show and tell on Thursday. And the reason I'm asking these questions is that I want to encourage you to think a lot about this. Think about the threats to sea turtles. Review our story maps, and I'll share those with everyone again on our Facebook posts. And we'd love to hear what you thought about this experience. Share what you've learned and ask more questions. I encourage especially students and younger children to do something creative. Do a piece of work, an artwork. You could do something with recycled plastic. You could create stop motion animation, an ebook, a presentation. Maybe you can go around your house and take an inventory. Just how much plastic is there, and what can you do to improve that? Maybe you could start a compost. There's so many things you can do, big or small, and I would love to hear what you might be inspired to do. I see someone already saying that they can reuse more. That's a great one. There's all kinds of ways that you can reuse things around the house. Less lights and development on the beach. I agree. I think that's a really easy one. It takes a little bit of education. In some places, there are sea turtle programs that are funding completely all of the replacement lights. Sometimes it's tricky to find the right light with a cover or having a red light bulb. But here in Costa Rica, it's actually better. There's fewer bugs if you have red lights. So most of the time, people are surprised to find that out and happy to make the change. Picking up trash from the street, I totally agree. We are, as the Wildlife Conservation Association, just starting to use the Marine Debris Tracker app, and I encourage everyone to get it. It's a wonderful app that helps us record all of the trash that we collect. And this is super important because if we just collect other people's trash and throw it out, they might throw the trash out again. We need to start understanding where this trash is coming from, what kind of activity is causing it so that we can make a difference. So download that app and start collecting data, and you can really make a difference. I'm going to share one more question before we go. I wanted to ask, and if you have more questions about the threats, feel free to put them in the comments. I wanted to ask you to share your name, age. If there's several of you, please share everyone's. What was the favorite thing that you learned from the Sea Turtle Science series? We'd love to hear feedback. I've already gotten a few notes. Thank you for sharing. We will be posting all of our activities embedded into a story map, so you can always go back to this later. We have worksheets on there as well. And we're working on a Spanish version, hopefully coming out in the next month or so. So please share your responses and any questions that you might have about sea turtle threats. I'm happy to answer, or even if it's not related to sea turtle threats, if you have another burning question. And I really hope that everyone will join us on our Google Meets virtual hangout on Thursday this week to share a little bit about your experience and what you've learned. I see Xander. Hi, Xander. Nice to meet you. I hope to meet you on Thursday. I saw, so Xander's mom sent me a photo of a wonderful, I'm not sure if it was lunch, it was a sandwich with some carrot sticks and I think sausage slices that were formed into the shape of a sea turtle with her eggs, and that was awesome. Great job, Xander. And I see Evelyn, Wallace, and Magenta. Nice to meet you. Well, I'm so happy that you guys have been joining, and I really hope that you'll come on Thursday. I'm going to stay here. Everything has been great. Thank you. I'm going to stay here for a little bit longer if you want to keep commenting. And as I said, really looking forward to hopefully a live meeting on Thursday. I wanted to take the time. I think that most of us are from this area here in Costa Rica. So while we're hanging in, I thought that I would focus a little bit more about the local threats to sea turtles. As I mentioned, that everywhere in the world is different, and Ocional and the Ocional National Wildlife Refuge are very unique when it comes to sea turtle conservation. Just so you know, here on the beaches of Nosara, which are Playa Pilada and Playa Guiones, those two beaches, most of the nests are actually, about half of them, are taken illegally, usually by someone who comes onto the beach on a motorcycle, on a quad, and there's not really any presence or enforcement regulation for anything to be done about that right now. But the big thing that we can focus on is that vehicles are actually not allowed on the beach, and the community and the refuge are really pulling together to help stop vehicle access onto the beach, which is also a huge safety issue when we have children running around on the beach. So that's one really positive thing that's coming out of sea turtle conservation here in the area. Unfortunately, the other threat is even more complicated. Most of the turtle nests, actually, or 15%, sorry, of the turtle nests are also eaten by dogs. Most of them are not stray dogs. They're dogs that are just on the beach, maybe with their owner or even alone. A lot of the dogs in Nosara like to travel around. And so here in Nosara, that's a really big issue. Dogs are not allowed on the beach, and especially for the sea turtles. So that's going to be a difficult cultural change for a lot of people that like to take their dogs on the beach. I'm going to have a look at the comments. I see we have a few more. The favorite thing was the turtle cam. Oh, I'm really happy you liked that. Please join us on May 5th. So I think that's next Tuesday. I'm going to do a live show and tell of the turtle cam. So if the turtle cam was your favorite component, then definitely join on that day, because you'll get to see all of the gadgets and how it works. And I'll also share more footage. So definitely make sure you join us on May 5th at 12 in Costa Rica. Well, with that, I think, one more question we have. Is it okay for Costa Rican nationals to gather eggs to eat? We see the huevo se vende sign. So that is exactly where I was going. One of the reasons why Ostunal is extremely unique, and it's a very controversial and complicated issue, is that here in Ostunal, because of the Aribatas and because of, remember, all of those eggs that get broken on the beach, they are legally allowed to collect eggs within the first 3 days of an Aribata startings. These are the eggs, according to some research studies, that are going to get destroyed anyway. Those are sold on a legal market in Costa Rica. The reason this is controversial, though, is that obviously it's difficult to ensure that illegal eggs don't get mixed into this legal market. So it's a really complicated issue, and that has come up a few times, so maybe I'll do another live discussion. There are a lot of really great videos that I could share with you to learn more about that program. It has been recognized internationally as a community conservation example, but it remains very controversial, and it makes sea turtle conservation in Costa Rica pretty complex as well. So it's a great issue to discuss and kind of debate on. Let's see if there are any other questions related to threats to sea turtles. I focused on the two main threats here in Costa Rica, the illegal take in Pilata and in Guiones, and the stray dogs. We have all kinds of threats in the ocean as well. Costa Rica has worked a lot with the laws in this area to protect turtles at sea, but that remains also very controversial with fishermen. So that's where it's hardest, I think, in Costa Rica for turtles to get protected is in the ocean, just kind of like everywhere else. But remember that we have to stay positive as conservationists. It's really hard to work with a species that is going extinct, but there are so many small things that we can do, and just by watching this series, I'm sure that you've already made a difference. So stay positive and join the movement to protect sea turtles in our oceans. I'm going to sign off now, but we'll be following the comments afterwards. And remember to follow our event. We're going to share the link for the Google Meets on Thursday if you'd like to join the show and tell. Have a great day, everyone.